Good evening and welcome to the NCU Cricket Show. Sorry folks, but there's no Neill Russell tonight. He stormed off to live the dream with the Manchester Storm ice hockey team. Joining us tonight on the show, Waringstown captain Lee Nelson to talk about the secrets of the club's success in 2015 as they won not only the NCU Premier League title but also were crowned Kings of Ireland in the Irish Cup. Talking of success, we've got Armagh duo Gareth McCarter and Harry Doyle to talk about their record-breaking season. They lifted the Senior 2 title, the Junior Cup for the first time in their history, and the 2020 Shield. And on our panel tonight, three of the most opinionated voices in local cricket. David Holmes, my fellow cricketing scribe, Michael Foster, the former Lisburn seam bowler and now top NCU umpire, and Cricket Europe's Michael Taylor. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Joining me first tonight, Waringstown captain Lee Nelson to talk about a historic 2015 for Waringstown. Lee, it's been quite a year.
Yeah, you could say that again. Obviously after the disappointments of last year, I mean, a lot's been said about that by now, but to bounce back with not only the league title but the All-Ireland also was special. Yeah.
I mean, where does it rank? Because I mean, with the celebrations here just over a fortnight ago, went in long into the night. People around the club say they haven't known scenes like this probably in the best part of a couple of decades.
Well, it certainly was the best cricketing day of my career. The whole day we got the weather, we got the crowd, we got the pitch, we got everything. It was just perfect, and to be able to perform on an occasion like that was something special. Yeah.
And made all the more special because you did it the hard way in the Irish Cup. You went to Clontarf, ranked as possibly the best team in Leinster. You went to Pembroke again in Dublin in the semi-final, and you beat Marion, fancied by many to win the competition in the final.
Yep. Well, if you're going to win the All-Ireland, you're going to have to beat two of the three big Dublin teams, or two of the plenty of Dublin teams. But the Clontarf win was special because to go down there and score 310 and then they get so close to 306. I mean, you go a long way to get to see a better game than what was down there that day, and with Ruan's innings and different wee parts that made that day special as well. I mean, the support that we brought to Clontarf was something that's had to be seen to be behold, and Pembroke was something similar. But yeah, it was just marvellous the way we went about it the whole way. Our attitude and from the competition from the first game to the last, we gave it everything and played pretty much an exciting brand of cricket the whole way through that I think we all enjoyed.
Some people will say, I mean, your pros obviously had major influence. Pretorius, 2 centuries in the quarter-final and the semi-final, and then JP de Villiers coming in. But it was more than that, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, throughout the whole season, from the league campaign or whether it be the Irish Cup, you had different games at different stages that everybody put their hand up. The game here against CI, which we more or less clinched the league with. That day, you had Johnny Bushe comes in at number 9 and scores probably the most valuable 15 not out he's probably ever scored, to get us over the line, when at one stage we didn't look like getting over the line. So at different stages everybody's put their hand up. I mean, you've got James Hall scored 1,200 runs, but nobody's mentioned that, when you're talking about an Irish Cup win. The young guys, James McCullum, again 600-700 runs. Everybody at some stage or the others put their hand up, and that's been the most pleasing part.
How do you top this though? Because it's going to be difficult to come back next year and try and emulate this.
We're now one All-Ireland win away from joining North County as the most wins in that competition. That's a big motivation. If we can put our name up in that pedestal, it'd be quite an achievement. In terms of retaining the league, it's something that we need to start doing on a regular basis. Not just winning it once and resting on your laurels and putting your feet up for a couple of years. That has been done, and it's certainly something that we don't want to be doing again. The Senior Cup was a disappointment because we got beaten in the semi-final. We didn't play so well towards the latter part of that game, and that cost us. And different things. At 2020, we were beating the final, so there's still parts of it that we can improve on. Of course, if you offer me a league win and an Irish Cup win again next year, I'll bite your arm off for it. But certainly we need to start putting ourselves up there more regularly than what we have done in previous years.
And finally, this season 2015 is not just about the first 11. Tell me about the success in other parts of the club league.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. The thirds won the league, the seconds won the league. We'll tie it with the Muckamore. The under 17s won the Colts Cup. You have the under 11s in the All-Ireland final next Saturday. Which is remarkable, for a club. All it is a wee village, and it's sort of in the middle of nowhere. That we continually be producing cricketers of that standard year in, year out. It's pleasing because it takes a lot of hard work. I mean, there's a lot of people around here put in hours that you wouldn't even comprehend to think about. even the night. I mean, there's 1 week left, and car park's still full. But yeah, it's pleasing for all those guys to put in so many hours and all the hard work that they can be rewarded with. Not only a first team that they can be proud of, but an entire club that they can be proud of.
Okay, Lee, thanks. I'm sure you're glad to have banished those demons from a year ago when you slipped out in the middle with the league at your mercy.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Joining us next, David Holmes interrogates Armagh Cricket Club's Gareth McCarter and Harry Doyle.
I'm the Waringstown Cricket Club here this evening, and I'm with another local club from the area, Armagh. It's been a fantastic season for Armagh in Section 2, and I've got two of the key players with me this evening. I've got Harry Doyle and Gareth McCarter. First I'm going to turn to Harry and say, Harry, obviously it has been a totally fantastic season for you as a club. If we go back to the start of the year, if we go back to April and you sort of looked at what were the targets for 2015, what would you say?
Well, certainly promotion was the main target. We did speak at length about trying to get it up a division, and certainly as the focus with the Junior Cup as well, we won the first round quite handsomely. Had no down seconds, and when we got that fixture in the off season, we were thinking that was going to be quite a tricky game, and we're thinking we're actually quite sort of pessimistic about it. But then we got that result behind us and won by 100 odd runs, and up from there onwards, we actually sort of targeted that competition, and then went the full way. And
obviously, just for good measure, you threw in a 2020 trophy as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing: we're not traditionally the best 2020 team out there, but this year we played great cricket in the 2020. We scored quickly, and we've a good young side too. So the fact that we're a good fielding side made a big difference, especially in the shortened version of the game.
Well, speaking of youngsters, beside you here, Gareth McCarter, who maybe falls slightly outside the youngster category and has been around Armagh for a few seasons now. And you've seen a lot going on at Armagh over the years. You've maybe been the nearly man. Well, what's been the big difference for you this year?
I think that one of the big things this season, one of the big factors was availability of players. Other seasons maybe we haven't had the same availability. It's tailed off maybe come August time. This year, obviously with the Junior Cup and such a big factor at the start of August, everyone really made a push to play. There was better turnouts at practice, there was better turnouts at matches, everyone was on time, everyone was doing a warm-up before the start. Just things really came together. I suppose getting a few new players in also helped. Andrew Bratton's return from Muckamore was a key, battled very sensibly in the middle order, and a key man with the ball bowling good spin. Jamie Rogers coming in, a young English guy, just arrived in Armagh, ended up scoring over 600 runs. The like of that's priceless.
Yeah. And obviously yourself, Harry, I mean, you look back at the season, you've had a good season yourself, but I mean, I think if you look now at the Armagh side, you can basically see strength almost there from 1 to 11 now.
Yeah, certainly, and the thing was when Gareth was the previous captain, the likes of myself were playing, we were only 16, 17 years of age. The likes of Matthew Steenson, who's the current captain now, myself and Andrew Smith and Jamie Rogers, we're all in sort of we're below 25 anyway, and there's nearly like a golden generation coming through. And the likes of Stuart Lester has been a massive find for us this year in particular. And and one thing, we've been in trouble on a couple of occasions this year, and guys who have been batting maybe 8 or 9 have come in and they've steadied the ship. And in particular, there was one game against Hollywood, and we were 90 odd for 6 in the Mall, and we ended up getting 198. Robin Sinton came in along with Andrew Smith, and they really steadied the ship and got us up to near 200 and won us the game ultimately. So that's an example of batting right down.
Yeah, and I think as well, if we look at the Junior Cup, Gareth, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the first time the club have also won the Junior Cup. It's obviously for clubs at your level, it's the holy grail. It's your senior cup, it's your major competition. I mean, what's it mean to a guy like you who's been around for a few years now to finally get your hands on that?
Well, it was incredible, to be honest. Our record in the Junior Cup in the last couple of years, a competition that we've always really focused on quite a lot, had been pathetic. We had got beaten the first couple of rounds every time. This year was a wee bit different, as Harry mentioned. We beat North Down early on, then we got a bye in the next round. We had a very good win against Cook at home, and then it got to the semi-final stage, and obviously Lower Vale, the local rivals in the semi-final. You don't get any bigger than that, and it ended up being played as a 2020. We played fantastic cricket to win that match, and then in the final, when it came down to CSNA seconds in the final, I think that was probably one of the most complete Armagh performances that there's ever been in my time playing with the club. We bowled and fielded really well to restrict them to a gettable target, and then our batting was quite fantastic with the man on my left and Jamie putting on over 100 for the first wicket in a cup final. You can't really ask for any better than that.
Yeah, and I think coming on to the man on your left here, you obviously were man of the match in that final. I wouldn't watch and being there myself, it was a tremendous all-round performance. Even when the weather intervened, you were so far ahead in that stage that you didn't actually need to go back out again and finish it off. So I mean, what sticks with you about the day?
That day, well, as soon as we got there, the whole organisation of the whole thing, the fact we got a big team bus and we had a really, really good support this year as well. Probably more support than any other years actually. Certainly for first team cricket anyway. And we got there, and there was nerves definitely. But once we got out in the field, we were very, very focused, and we started off well with the ball, and we got Horwood earlier, which was the big wicket. We knew if he batted for any sort of length of time, it could be a long day at the office. And we got him earlier, and bowled very tidy at the start, and it all came together. 195, I think we chased down, in about 31 overs or something like that. So you couldn't have complained with that.
Well, obviously, some people might look at it and say that guys, the hard work's done now. You have 3 trophies in the cabinet. You move on, you move up next year, and unlike in the past, you have had the commitment. As both of you look forward to next year, obviously it's a big challenge, moving up, stepping up at it again. Gareth, for you, do you think you need to strengthen, or are you happy with the squad you have?
Well, obviously the discussion has went about the addition potentially of an overseas player, which most of the teams in the league above had last year, and it seems to be a key factor in that league. I think 9 teams out of the 10 last year had a professional, so it would be hard, but we're going to have to look at that and fundraise. The team we have is probably as good as most, maybe, like the local players, if everyone can turn up. But we're just going to have to focus on what we can control. We're going to have to practice hard. We're going to have to focus well, and we're going to have to do the basics well. And if we can do that, we'll see what happens.
Alright, what do you see? What are the challenges for you, for the team, for next year?
Once again, Gareth sort of touched on that dedication, and making sure that everyone can play as much as possible. Obviously, with summer holidays and family commitments and things, there's going to be the odd game where you're going to maybe be under strength. But if you deepen your squad and bring in some younger guys as well, might be a key ingredient. I think if we can bring in an overseas player of some sort, or some sort of addition to the squad that offer some coaching experiences for the guys, and a bit more focus on off the field stuff, I think that's going to play a big factor in the season. Because I think 1 to 11, if you look at our team and look at the likes of some of the teams that have been promoted and have actually stayed in that league, we've nothing to fear. But once again, the overseas player, having somebody like that there in your team makes a massive difference, in my opinion, certainly. Well,
guys, thank you both very much for your time this evening. It's been great talking to you. Fantastic season for Armagh, and let's hope it continues again 2016. Thanks very much.
Welcome inside the Roy Harrison Pavilion. Joining me tonight, 3 debutants on the NCU Cricket Show. To my immediate left, David Holmes, my fellow cricketing scribe. Far left, Michael Taylor, the Cricket Europe blogger and commentator. And to my right, Michael Foster, the former Lisburn seam bowler and now top NCU umpire. As we're at the lawn, I think it's pretty apt to start with Waringstown. David, I guess no one spends more time at the lawn in a summer than you, much to the consternation of some at Instonians. I guess you should know more than anyone then about Waringstown's success in 2015.
Yeah, it is a bit of a second home for me, I suppose, in many ways, Alistair. And if I look back at the season, and I look back, maybe take the reference point of being 2014 from a Waringstown perspective, Waringstown would be disappointed. Obviously, no trophies in 2014, 2015, as you've said, the Irish Senior Cup and the Premier League. For me, from the outset of the season, I looked at it and said to myself, if anybody finishes in front of Waringstown, they're going to win the league. So was it a surprise to me they won the league? No, it wasn't. What's the difference between 2015 and 2014? For me, one day exemplified that, and you were here yourself, the famous 68 plays 69 for 8. And I think on that day against CIYMS, for me, some of that Waringstown side actually learned how to win. It wasn't pretty, it was ugly. But they learned how to win, and that could have been again a massive changer in the season. They came through it. They went on to win by 2 wickets, and I think in the end of the day, the Irish Cup final, they put in a superb performance to win that, and without a doubt, they were the best team over the course of the season.
Michael, Waringstown the best team you encountered this season?
Oh, by a distance. They've got the best strength and depth of probably any club team in the NCU, maybe in Ireland, over the past decade. You can see them in the pitch, and they've got 6 Irish internationals, 3 current interprovincial players, a professional and a good club batsman in Davy Dawson. There's no real weakness in that team, maybe apart from the lack of a quality third seamer. And where they've improved, not much on the surface has changed. They won 11 league matches in 2014. They won 12 this year. Were it not for one slip on the square in the match against Instonians, they would have won the league last year. But I think this year there's a toughness and a ruthlessness to them that comes with maturity. A lot of the younger players are just getting more experience, they're getting better. But I think Simon Johnson has to take a lot of credit. He's drilled them, they know their jobs now. We always thought at Ballymena that we could beat them on a day. You know, if their heads weren't screwed on, we had a chance. And we did. We beat them 3 or 4 times, but not anymore. Like, they know what they have to do and they go out and do it now.
Michael, no one has a better view than you, I guess, throughout the season. Standing behind the bowler's arm. Surprised at how it all panned out?
No, Alistair, I can't say I was. I thought that last season Waringstown got mugged in the shadows of the post, so to speak, by Instonians. I felt last season they were probably the best all-round side in the league, and I felt going into this season, as David rightly pointed out, anybody finished ahead of them was going to win the league. I suppose the only surprise, if you could call it that, for me in this year's programme was the showing of North Down. I thought they had an excellent season. Confounded a few critics, I would think, who probably had them penciled in for 4th place. But I think if you look at the rest of the league programme and the finishing positions, you could probably have predicted it from March, maybe April time. As I say, other than North Down maybe finishing ahead of CI and Instonians, there is no other shock in that league for me.
Yeah. David, CI probably the most talked about team still in the NCU. They've ended up Challenge Cup winners, 2020 Cup winners. Will they be satisfied with their lot?
I would say, if you look at the season as a whole, the answer to that is yes, they will. For me, one of the key objectives for CI was to win the Challenge Cup. They've won the Challenge Cup. It's the first time they've won the Challenge Cup. Are they finished with what they have in terms of ambition? No, I probably think not. I think if you look back on a season and say you've got 2 trophies in the cabinet, you can't be disappointed with that, especially when one of them was the Challenge Cup.
Michael, I guess the other side of the CI story is the collapse in the league, very similar to what happened in 2014. Is it purely down to Rassie van der Dusen's early departure?
No, I wouldn't. First, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a collapse. They came 3rd or 4th in the end, maybe tied with Instonians in terms of wins. Rassie went whenever there were 3 matches left. They lost 2 of those, but one of them was that freak of a match here at the Lawn. The next day they lost by 50 runs to Instonians. They're good teams. They could have lost those matches even with Rassie. So no, I don't think that's purely to blame. It was 2 matches at the end of a year.
Michael, were CI too reliant on Rassie?
Well, I'm not sure if too reliant is the best way to describe it. Certainly Rassie and Doc probably formed the most formidable opening partnership anywhere in the league. I think that the difficulty for CI this year has been that there's been a few players who they've brought in over the summer who will probably look back and reflect on a season where they underachieved. And in a league campaign over 14 games, that probably can be the difference between pushing for the title and finishing in 3rd place or joint 3rd place as they did. But Rassie's record speaks for itself. He's an absolute quality player, probably the best I saw this season, and arguably the best I've seen in the last 4 or 5 seasons. But I think just to say that it's down to him and his early departure that CI didn't win the title, I think Michael's right. I think that he left with whatever it was 3 games to go, and at that point I think Waringstown were still in the box seat, and Waringstown finished the job off. They won their last 3 games.
David, we say that the season is barely over, and the inks are barely dry on Waringstown's name going on the trophies, but CI have already decided not to bring Rassie back. Over 1,000 runs at an incredible average. Are you surprised?
The answer to that is probably no, and I'll tell you one thing for certain: Instonians will be absolutely delighted that Rassie isn't coming back, because that just seemed to be a benefit fixture for him when he turned up against Instonians. As Michael said, they lost a game to Instonians when Rassie had left. Given Rassie's record, I don't think there was any doubt of the result of that one had he still been there. But a little facetiously, you have to look at this and say, any club that brings a professional across, trophies are not handed out in the first 3 months of the season, by and large. The big trophies are at the end of the season. At the end of the season, you've got the Irish Senior Cup, you've got the league. If you're professional, it's going to miss 3 or 4 games. You know, he can win you 10 games, he can score you 10 centuries. You lose those last 4 games, you ain't going to win the league. It's as simple as that. If you want to win the league, if you want to win an Irish Senior Cup, you got to have a professional who's there, committed, and 100% committed to the club for the whole of the season. That's my opinion as to why CI have decided to go with someone other than Rassie.
And that other someone, Michael, Justin Kemp, one of the biggest names to we'll have in the NCU. How did you greet that news?
It's a fairly significant signing. I think that's an understatement. Other than Craig McMillan having come here after the end of his international career, it's probably the biggest name signing that there has been in NCU cricket for a long time, maybe even ever. I mean, I know De Villiers was here, but he was still a kid whenever he came. We didn't know he was going to be that good. Kemp could win them almost everything next year. I know he's 37 or 38, but if he's still fit, he could be awesome with bat and ball, and that's a big thing. I mean, Rassie was a fantastic batsman, but he wasn't a great bowler. And if they have somebody of that quality with both bat and ball, that could make a huge difference.
Michael, you touched briefly on North Down there. Let's take you back to the winter. Ryan Hare leaves for Mugamore. Nick Larkin moves on. Johnny Terrett goes back to Cliftonville. A few people were predicting their demise. What do you think has been the difference? Because they weren't really, contenders in the last couple of seasons. They got their hands in the Ulster Cup this time. They were very close to winning the league. What was the difference for them this year, do you think?
Well, I mean, they've had a superb season. There's no doubt about that, Bushe. I mean, obviously, your starting point is Peter Milan, an absolute quality professional. He played in a losing cause, probably one of the best innings I've seen this season, in the semi-final of the 2020 Cup, where he took a decent Waringstown attack for 100. But I don't think that he's the sole reason for their success this season. They seem to have had a very good team spirit about them. Yeah. Peter Shields seems rejuvenated behind the sticks. There was a lot of people questioning Marty Moreland as the choice of captain, but you can't say anything other than he's done a very good job there. They play their cricket with a good spirit. They play it with a bit of fun. They play it hard, and they've done very well this season. And fair play to them.
Yeah. David, the young guns have come through at North Down this season. Like Peter Davison, Peter Reekin and Alistair Shields have been around for a while. Danny Graham the same, but some key performances from them there all season were key, not just, as Michael says, Milan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with everything that has been said. If we look at North Down season, the only argument I'd have with what Michael said, actually, he said, maybe they finished 4th. I think a lot of people would maybe say they would even finished 5th, possibly put CSN in front of them. So for me, they have been the real overachievers in this season. There will always be somebody that stands out. And you're right, I mean, we have seen from names like Shields, Ali Shields, Peter Aiken, guys who this year have actually taken the step and possibly stepped up to that next level and actually said, yeah, we are good PL players, we're going to make runs, we're going to take wickets. They have been a good performing side all round, and as I say, Peter Milan, superb cricketer. It's been a fantastic season for them to have a trophy in the cabinet. I think they will be absolutely delighted.
Let's talk Instonians. Michael, Waringstown were probably the newly men of 2014. That tag, does that belong to Instonians this year?
Well, in the sense that they nearly won the cup final, and until the last month of the season they were in the shine of winning the league, possibly
Ulster Cup as well.
Oh, and they really snatched defeat from the jaws of victory there. That seemed to be a remarkable conclusion to that match. I wouldn't like to label anybody as nearly when they came close, and for whatever reasons, for various reasons probably, they didn't win anything. They're a good team, they're a good side. There's nothing to suggest they won't challenge on numerous fronts next year.
David, on the eve of the season, Ahmad Wasim, an absolute key figure for Instonians last season, he dropped a bombshell. Well, Pakistan dropped a bombshell, they picked him, and Instonians on the eve of the season had to search for a new pro. Was that the moment that maybe defined their season?
Well, I mean, I think, when you look back at that now, they certainly started the season, if you like, in this sort of stopgap position where they had Ryan Nurse. Certainly you could not put him in the same class as Ahmad. Then they bring in a pro after 4 or 5 games, arguably when they were already out of a couple of competitions. I don't think, just from that perspective, when you look at it from a professional perspective, they didn't have a settled look about the side. But I think they will be enormously disappointed with the 2 cup finals. As we already alluded to, the Ulster Cup final, yeah, I just don't know what was going on that day. That seemed to be totally in control, and then not making allowance for the weather that was obviously coming in. I think the things that they will look back and they will look to bring a quality pro next season. I think they will challenge again. They've two good players there, the likes of James Shannon, again, 800 odd runs this season, finished the season tremendously. You've still got the likes of Andrew White with a lot to give to the game, and this crop of youngsters they have coming through.
Michael, you look at the stats on StatZone and the Cricket Europe website, you'll see the Waringstown professional Ruin Pretorius right up there with a bat. You'll see obviously Peter Milan, and you'll see Randy Vassie van der Dusen. Was the key for Instonians that they didn't have a professional who was performing like that?
Well, I mean, the stats would point to that, certainly. I think the continuity aspect of it didn't help them either. The fact that they had Imad lined up, he left, and as the boys have pointed out, Randers really wasn't of the calibre that one might expect in the Premier League from your professional. I mean, the guy they brought in was a decent cricketer, but I would be very surprised if the likes of Rassi, Peter Milan or Pretorius would have not got Instonians in a position to at least win one trophy.
Yeah. Let's look closer at Ballymena. Let's look at the bottom end of the table. Ultimately, you've gone down to Section 1. Maybe that's not the story though, because I mean yourself, maybe even James, talking to James Kennedy, your captain, pretty openly, a few of the guys have been saying, well, this actually might be better, for Ballymena to rebuild in Section 1 rather than staying in the Premier League. Is that fair comment?
That is fair comment. We've lost so many good players over the last 2 or 3 years, and we don't have the financial resources to replace them immediately, that we simply no longer have the personnel to compete in the Premier League. There are 5 pretty good cricket teams in the Premier League, and if you can't match them, you're going to suffer at their hands. We had 4 competitive days really against Lisburn and Carrickfergus, and if you're in our position where you're trying to blood 15 and 16 year olds and numerous 15 and 16 year olds, it's not the classic Waringstown giving a young guy a go in a strong team. We had to play quite a number of them, and honestly you can't do that in the Premier League.
Situation pretty similar at Lisburn. Michael, Lisburn have obviously survived. It wasn't a particularly enjoyable season, I think it's maybe fair to say. I mean, there's been a kind of talk that maybe Lisburn might feel in a similar way to Ballymena, but you've stayed up. How do you kind of see the next kind of couple of years there?
Well, a lot of what Michael says resonates with our club. We've lost players over the last, well, certainly decade in particular. The last 5 years haven't helped as well, with some fairly high profile players playing their trade elsewhere. But it hasn't been enjoyable, you're right. There's no fun in going down and watching your club struggle against the might of CI or Waringstown or Instonians. I think that whilst we were happy to stay up, and at one point of the season there was a very real possibility that wouldn't be the case, with Ballymena having those 2 reasonably early victories on the board. 2016 is going to be a difficult season for us. What I would say is that we've a nice crop of young cricketers coming through the ranks. They're still a bit young, they're still around that 13-14 age group. Mm-hmm. They'll need a bit of time. They started off this season in the 4ths, they matured into the 3rds, and they all produced match-winning performances for the 3rds. We'll be looking to see those guys being blooded in our second 11 next season. Our seconds are still in Junior 1, so they're going to get a reasonable standard of cricket. And if we stay up over the next couple of seasons, and we're certainly not eternal pessimists by thinking that we're the next cab in the rank by any stretch of the imagination, but we know that the next couple of seasons will present challenges for us as a club. We're ready to try and meet those challenges, and hopefully as we move on down the line, the future will be a bit brighter for us at Wallace Park.
Okay. David, the Premier League's almost become a league, 2 leagues within a league. The idea of an 8-team league, reducing it to a team league, was produce more competitive cricket, and yet here we are a few seasons into it and we're already talking about 2 leagues. That can't be particularly good, can it?
No, it can't, but I'm not going to stand here and suggest to you that I have a solution to that. I know there's people who say, should it be an 8-team league, should it be a 10-team league, maybe even more controversial, should it be a 6-team league? We've pointed out there are 5 decent sides there. If you turn it back to a 10-team league, and the two gentlemen on the outside will have their own points of view on this one. It potentially gives you, instead of 4 days competitive cricket, it gives you 8 days competitive cricket. Is that making it any better? Is it raising the standards? I'm not convinced that it is. But, you know, the top teams will be the top teams, and the better players, in my opinion, will gravitate towards those top teams. They always have over the years, whether it's been an 8-team, a 10-team league or whatever. If you look back, you know, local cricket is littered with guys, NCU cricket is littered with guys who have moved from one club to another to win trophies. And, you know, that's personal ambition at the end of the day, Alistair.
Michael, is there a problem?
I think there probably is a problem. In one of my columns earlier this year, I analysed whether or not the 8-team league had made the Premier League more competitive, and what I found, I think fairly conclusively, is that it hadn't. There were not closer matches, and there were even more hammerings being handed out on a weekly basis than there had been under a 10-team system. But I, like David and like most other people, we don't know what the solution is. At the minute, there aren't enough good cricketers in the NCU to fill out 8 competitive teams. That is a problem. If you bring it down to 6 teams, then somebody will struggle. No matter how many teams there are in the league, somebody will always get a hiding every week. Somebody will always struggle. So what I think everybody has to work out is what we want from our league. Do we want a league that produces the most number of high-quality matches so that people can seek naturally into an interprovincial system? Or do we want a league which serves the best interests of as many clubs as possible? And I think we have to decide that first before we start restructuring the league.
Okay, let's move on to Section 1. I guess the centre of one of the biggest surprises of the summer. I think if you talked to 99 people before the season started, 100 people, 99 of them would have said Muckamore to go up. Instead it was Derryaghy. David, you're an avid interest obviously in Section 1. Firstly, fair play to Derryaghy and what happened at Muckamore.
Totally, absolutely agree with you, and certainly I will not claim to be the one. I would have been in the 99, which looked at that Muckamore side at the start of the year and said, if we go back 2 seasons to the Muckamore side that came up into the Premier League, won everything in front of them, 4 trophies, tremendous season. They're up into the Premier League, and as tends to happen, the team that goes up goes back down, or thereabouts. They will struggle when they come up. And then you look at what they put into that side, and they brought, a Ryan Hare, they brought a Jay Hunter, they brought an Advocate across as a professional dandicar. What went wrong? It's a hard one to call. I probably look at it in first instance and say, but my understanding is, one, the professional came across and was injured, so he was home after 3 or 4 games. Ryan Hare possibly didn't get the weight of runs maybe that was expected from him. And when you look at it, they started the season brilliantly. Let's not forget, this is a side who beat Coleraine in the Irish Cup. So what went wrong? It's hard to put a finger on what exactly went wrong. If I had the secret sauce, I'm sure people would be wanting me to coach them, which God forbid. I don't have a secret sauce for that. But sometimes things just don't pan out the way they're meant to pan out. I don't know if there's a right or a wrong answer to the question, Alistair, but I certainly think the fact that your pro's injured it's not a good place to start.
Michael, you officiated for a few Section 1 matches. What do you think? Surprised that Derryaghy went all the way?
Well, I suppose if you'd asked me that at the start of the season, I would have, like David and probably the 99 who you mentioned, would have probably thought on balance with Muckamore's firepower that they should be the ones going up. But what I would say about Derryaghy is they've got a very good team spirit. I umpired them a couple of times, and you couldn't help but impressed by the way that they supported each other, particularly in the field. There was a lot of discussion between the boys. They were always up for it, and what they did was put together a winning run. And sometimes that type of momentum will carry it all the way. And in the final analysis, it did. They got beaten by Muckamore, I think, 3 times this season, but yet they were clinical in the other games. Yeah. The last game of the season the second last game of the season, where obviously the pressure was still on against Temple Patrick. Temple Patrick put a decent total on the board down at Queensway, 230. Now, if a team didn't have, and I know you like this expression yourself, Alistair, the team didn't have the bottle for that. Well, that Derryaki showed their bottle that day. They chased down that 230 with the minimum of fuss, and it wasn't all down to the pro and to Craig Lewis. Their opening batsman, a couple of young fellas, got them off to a very good start, and that set up the platform for what proved to be a comfortable chase. So you have to take your hats off to Derryaki. I think on the way they played their cricket this season, nobody can deny that they didn't deserve to come up, and best of luck to them next year. We're certainly very much looking forward to welcome them at Wallace Park, and we've got the extra bar staff on for that event already.
Michael, I was at Ballygamartin Road a couple of Sundays ago when they clinched the league, and interviewed Craig Lewis, the captain, afterwards. He said, he was pretty emphatic. We are not going to strengthen our squad from outside the club. Is that wise?
It depends on your definition of wisdom, I guess. But if you've won the league with a young team that's got a tremendous spirit, I think you owe it to those players to play them week in, week out in the Premier League. It might not be the wisest thing in the sense that it might not guarantee their survival, but I think it's an incredibly admirable thing to do, and I wish them all the best.
Alistair, just one thing I like to say about Section 1, and it's not the top end, it's the bottom end, and you talk about spirit and bottle. I think, there should be, a lot of people should look at what Donaghcloney did. I think they showed a tremendous spirit and bottle at the end of the season by coming back from a nearly dead and buried position, where, if you'd looked at that with 6 games to go, you would say Donaghcloney would be playing their cricket in Section 2 next year without a doubt. They finished the season like a train, and again, you have to take their hats off to them and say they did that without the professional at the end of the season. I think that was a tremendous effort.
Another subject, sorry, Michael, at the end of that season, at the bottom of Section 1, at the top of Section 2, confusion over net run rate. What was going on there?
Look, I think we've got ourselves in a position here, and the gentleman beside me here is a net run rate expert, shall we say, where everybody has put him in that position as a net run rate expert. I think we've got ourselves in a position, or the union rather, have got a position where you're deciding possible promotion and relegation on net run rate. Personally, I'm not a fan. I think you've got yourself in a position with something that you can't actually properly manage. And that is not being critical of anybody. It's simply saying when you look at this, I mean, was that 1 run here? Was that 2? And we've guys keeping the score, and we're not exactly sure. I mean, we were in a situation there in that Saintfield scenario where 1 run was going to make a difference. Now, people are not going to have that level or degree of accuracy. Now, potentially that maybe throws it back on guys like Michael here from the umpire fraternity. And, I'm a big fan of embracing technology and the technology we can use. And equally, I know Michael is a fan of that and uses an app on his phone from time to time when he's scoring. I mean, to me, when we have the technology to do that, I think we should be using that sort of stuff to make life easy and not relying on somebody who at the end of the match, when the winning run's hit, has thrown their hands up and run off and left the book there and hasn't finished it or completed it. I'd like to get Michael's take on that, and sort of the use and embracing technology. I think there has to be a better way to do this.
Well, I mean, you're right, I do use an app. I've come in for a little bit of criticism from some of my colleagues for doing so, and I deliberately haven't used it this season in the Premier League, but I do use it down the leagues. The point you're making there about Saintfield is a very valid one in that Laurelville situation. The difficulty I see in Section 2 is that there's no requirement to have a scorer, and what you'll find in a lot of those games in that section is that there could be 3 or 4 different boys from the opposition doing the book, and at one point it looked, as you said, it was going to come down to a run or 2. Laurelville, to their credit, have gone back over their books, as I understand it, and found out that their net run rate was actually quite a bit lower than had been previously imagined. That's where things like that app could come into play in those leagues. If you have that verification from the umpires. I think in one of the forums or somewhere, maybe on Twitter, it was that there was a point of view that umpires aren't there to keep the score. Well, I'm not sure I share that particular view. The laws of cricket say that the umpires are there to ensure that the score is correct. Now, obviously, they do that as a team with the scorers when they're present. But I think it brings you back to that point. Is net run rate the best way to decide a league where there are no trained or official scorers? I'm not so sure that it is.
Well, I think you've made the point, Michael, and it's one that I tend to agree with about the the scorers and the umpires, to me, they work as a team. And if you do read the laws of cricket at the end of the day say it is down to the umpire at the end of the game to ensure with the scorers that the scores are correct. Now, I'm not saying they don't do that, but I'm saying at the end of a game, how difficult is it to just simply take another 5 minutes, go over there and go, guys, do the two books add up? Is everybody happy with the score? That's it. It's done. It's dusted. Whatever score is agreed there and then, there's no need for Stuart's inquiries later. It's done and dusted. 5 minutes work.
David, 2015 hasn't been a vintage one for the Northern Knights. Losing twice heavily, I think, to the Lightning in the one-day stuff. Bottom of the table in the three-day stuff, and 4 defeats out of 4 in the 2020. Hasn't been a pretty picture.
No, it hasn't been a pretty picture. And if you want honesty from me, I don't think it's going to be a pretty picture for some considerable time to come. It's quite simple. We're not good enough. We don't have the strength and depth to challenge the Leinsters of the world at the moment. And that's not being critical of the players. It's maybe looking at the players that have actually made themselves available, and perhaps equally more important, those who have decided not to make themselves available for selection. For me, if you're looking at the Knights and the Knights to be a competitive side, whatever you want to call it, you have to be looking at a 5-year plan. Because if I look at the Knights and I look at that side, how many of that side would play on a Leinster side? And equally, when I look at the Irish under-19 side that's just been picked, there are 2 players from the NCU on that side. So I think we are some way from having a competitive Knights side at the minute. I don't know what you feel about that, Michael.
Oh, I think it was a bad year. There's no way of getting around that. I think the major problem the Knights face is that you could almost pick a better 11 of cricketers who, for whatever reasons, are not playing regularly for that team. Now, it could be retirement or simply that they're just not interested or work commitments, whatever. But there are a lot of good cricketers in the NCU who aren't playing for them. And they are caught in the middle ground. I mean, Leinster simply are better. Leinster could probably field 2 teams that could win the championship. The Northwest are lucky in that they have a good core of young players, especially bowlers. I mean, I think the further you go up in the scale, the quality of bowling matters even more. It's what we find watching Ireland. The bowlers aren't quite good enough at ODI level, even though the batsmen are. And the Knights don't have that, so they don't have the quality and they don't have that core of good young players and especially good young bowlers. I'm not quite sure how we fix that, but at the minute we have a Knights team with a couple of exceptions. The players in the team aren't necessarily in the best couple or 3 players in their own clubs, and if that's the case, you're probably never going to win any tournaments.
And what about the lack of enthusiasm amongst kind of the NCU fraternity for the inter-pro competition? Because obviously the crowds have continued to be pretty disappointing.
Well, it's one of many things that proves that there's a complete disconnect between club cricket, which is the heart of cricket in Ireland, and interprovincial and international cricket. Now, cricket in the NCU is parochial, and I actually mean that in a good sense, because if you didn't care about how your club did, nobody would care about anything. And I don't really know, again, I'm not sure anybody has any solutions about how you get people along to watch interprovincial matches. There was one good night at Belmont in 2020, there must have been 150 people there, but how many mostly any other sport in the world or in Northern Ireland could pull many more people for a similar event, and I don't know what the solution is.
Okay. Well, let's wrap up with something a bit more positive then. Michael, let's think best match you officiated on this season.
I think there were 2 in one day. If truth be told, Alistair, the 2020 finals day, the semi-final was a clinker between Northdown and Waringstown. I think I mentioned it earlier, with Peter Milan's 100 almost bringing Northdown through to chase a big total from Waringstown. And then the final itself, well, I mean, your dad's house was the chief target area for Rassie. His 88 that day was brutal in its ferocity. And that turned into a really good game of cricket. Kyle McCallum will probably wish he had that last over back, but it was a magnificent game of cricket to watch, and I had the best view in the house.
Absolutely. What about best player of the year that you officiated? I mean, I'm not just talking quality, but kind of sportsmanship, that kind of thing as well.
Well, I'll look beyond the pros,
Yeah, of course.
and I didn't see much of James Hall and the likes of that this year, and obviously he had a standout season. But for me, the guy who I really took to this year in terms of his contribution to his club and the NCU cricket generally, and he came with a bit of a health warning for umpires, was actually Johnny Thompson. And I have to say, I thought Johnny was a breath of fresh air for the NCU. He played his cricket hard, but he played it in the right way, as far as I'm concerned, as an umpire. He was always very good-natured, very gentlemanly, particularly to certainly any games I stood in involving CIYMS. And I hope to see him back here next season. I think he brings something to NCU cricket.
Michael, you're a player of 2015?
It would actually be the same thing. And Johnny Thompson, as a bowler, as a batsman, and as a guy, he's probably given the most to NCU cricket this year. The best match that I saw was also CI versus Waringstown, the semi-final at Belmont, where CI from nowhere managed to chase 270. And that was the kind of match to which cricket in the NCU should aspire, because it was fantastic.
Yeah. David, what about you?
I'm afraid it's not going to be very original, Alistair. I've developed a great admiration for Johnny Thompson. I think it's fantastic to see him down playing his trade in the NCU, and I certainly have no objection to players from the Northwest coming down and playing down here. And equally, maybe it's an adventure for some players from the NCU to go up there and do that. In terms of a game, I wouldn't argue about the semi-final as well. In terms of, but you know what? In terms of pure theatre. 68 plus 69 for you was hard to beat that day. It just was ebbing and flowing. And again, Johnny Thompson, one of the key players in that, in terms. And when I look at that day, I look, and you were here yourself, the quality of the close catching that day was right out of the top drawer.
Well, for me, I go for James Hall for my player of the season. I don't think you can ignore somebody who contributed just a pretty remarkable effort with a bat, key to Waringstown's success. I agree with Michael. My favourite day of the season here was the 2020 finals day. The crowd, the weather, the 2020 format, perhaps a pointer, for the future of cricket here. Thanks very much for joining us tonight, Michael Foster, Michael Taylor, and David Holmes, and thanks everyone at home for joining us. We'll see you all again in 2016.